What's up, everybody, and welcome to the House of Holocrons, episode 60. This time we're talking about Attack of the Clones, episode 2. This was a all-star kind of moment where we get a new face for Anakin Skywalker. The older, more mature Hayden Christensen comes in to play what is he, like almost, I think he's like 18 in this one? Something like that?
Uh, I don't remember. I know he's up there.
Yeah. But Padawan, of course, Obi-Wan Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin is brash and brazen, and this is kind of where we're going to start seeing a lot more of that emotion come out of him. It's a
19.
19. Okay, he's 19. It's an absolutely amazing movie, really. And rewatching it now, I kind of have a lot more love for it. It was probably one of my least favorite prequel movies, and it's still like number three out of the three of them to me. But that's just because the other two are so amazing. But Attack of the Clones is definitely a movie to still 100% watch and rewatch because it gets better, especially when you know everything and like Bad Batch and all that stuff.
Yeah, the I was always the odd one that I actually really liked
Hmm.
Attack of the Clones. It was one. It was for a while. It was my favorite uh prequel. It was one of my top movies for a while. I don't know if I would still say it's better than Episode 3 as I've
Hmm.
gotten older. Um, I think it's up there. I think one thing that holds it back is it's still got that kind of clunky dialogue that we got from episode one, and yeah, it's weird. It's got some of the residuals from episode
Hmm.
one that kind of held episode one back, but it also had it's developed its own. It's weird.
Hmm.
It's it, it's a weird transition from episode one because certain things change and they you like just get kind of time jumped where Anakin's fully grown, and Obi-Wan is now. They've been together for a bit, and
Hmm.
they constantly reference the time jump that we don't get to see.
Yeah.
And it honestly, from an outsider's perspective, if I can speak, um, it seems weird because it's like nobody ages except for Anakin,
Hmm.
and I get it because he's the youngest, so he's going to age a lot.
Well, Obi
But I
Wan has a
mean,
nice like kind of mullet and a beard.
but it's true,
Yeah.
and that the actors they use are the same actors
Hmm.
from episode one. They just replaced the child with a grown adult. Um, so it does look out of place. It's like how we're not supposed to know they just took out the kid and everybody else
Hmm.
stayed the same. Yeah, the prequels. Yeah, the well, all the movies except for the original movies don't the age difference kind of gets all muddy and
Hmm.
things don't kind of click together as well they should because of that.
I've always enjoyed episode two, especially there because it came out when we were like becoming a little bit more into the teenage esque, preteens into teenagers and stuff like that. And I really think that movie spoke volumes to a lot of the angst and gave us the reason. Like, it's crazy though that the only thing that you really get, like, that movie really does focus on why Anakin falls in love with Padme, which is just obsession. Like, going back and again watching it, he hits on her so
Yeah,
hard from the second he sees her. She's uncomfortable the first few times they meet.
he's like, "Am I old enough yet?" Yeah, and that's yeah. He sees her because he's been gone doing Jedi
Hmm.
stuff, and he's like, it's clearly been a long time, and she still sees him as that little boy, and he's like, "But I'm a man. Pay attention to this." But I mean, it's a cool time for Star Wars.
Yeah.
I feel like the movie doesn't touch on enough of the Clone Wars
Hmm.
because it's the beginning of the Clone Wars, but it's one of the most deadliest times of the Clone Wars because of that. Um, we kind of see how the clones were made.
Yeah.
We can see their origin story. Find out that there's Boba Fett has a quote unquote father.
Yeah.
So we find out a lot of origin for some major things. Um,
It's too
and we
bad
get
that
this.
the other Mandalorians aren't in the movie. I would love if they had
Yeah,
just like thrown an extra Mandalorian down in one of the random scenes of Camino. Uh, but that's
because I think some of it's canon where they had other Mandalorians
mhm,
there. I
with
know
the
for a while it was where they had multiple Mandalorians teaching. It wasn't just Jango Fett. Though I don't think Jango Fett actually really did much of the training.
mhm.
I think he just was the clone.
He was pretty indifferent.
Um,
He was just like the donor, just the DNA sample.
yeah, but they did borrow Mandalorians to help
Hmm.
train them. I I'd have to double check how much canon that still
Yeah.
is though. But
Hopefully it is because it's a really good part of it. But I really did like all the Camino stuff. It's a really fun thing. Sifo Dyas and Darth
yeah,
Tyrannus. You get these mysterious names that you'll soon figure out who they are, but it's very confusing. Sifo Dyas isn't very explained until you get to like
no,
the Count Dooku book, Jedi Lost, and stuff like that. You have to
yeah,
really.
they brushed past it in the movie with
Mm,
Sifo Dyas. Yeah, we get Count Dooku, which is arguably one of the coolest Sith that we got to see on
oh
screen.
yes, no, one of the all-time coolest. Once we finally do get this, we get a cool battle between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, which is awesome. Where Obi-Wan then tails Jango Fett to Geonosis, which is
Yeah,
where a lot of the movie is gonna really take off. The Geonosis stuff is like peak Star Wars to me. I think the infiltration scene is fun. The arena scene is bomb. Everyone loves the arena scene, but
yeah.
before that, I love the scene where Obi-Wan is captured and Count Dooku is talking to Obi-Wan, and now again knowing Qui-Gon, reading these books, going back and knowing who Dooku was. He seriously meant like, no, Qui-Gon would have listened to me. He tells him plain as day, what if I told you a Sith Lord is in control of the Galactic Republic?
And the funny thing is his transition into full Sithhood isn't that much. It hasn't transit that period of time between him kind of going to the dark side
Mm-hmm.
into this movie. There isn't that much room. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember the year difference, but it just happened not too long ago.
Yeah, because with Tales of the Jedi, we find out that he is still a Jedi Knight all the way up until
Yeah.
Qui Gon's death. It's after Qui Gon dies that he then follows Palpatine. So that's recent.
Yeah, and and he was known. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and what we see when they reference him, we see people still think he is a Jedi. He's just working for the Separatists,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he partially, even though he knows it's not true, I still think he partially believes that the Separatists is a kind of a rebellious movement, not necessarily the full evil movement that it is for Sidious, but I still think there's a part of him that kind of holds on to like maybe I can kind
Mm-hmm.
of turn this into some kind of rebellion, which he kind of eventually goes full dark side.
Yeah.
So because we still see him pretty early on in his career,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean the fact that they took the legendary Dracula actor and literally made a Dracula Sith
Yeah.
that really fit his character quite well.
Well, I
Uh,
love the curved handle for the hilt, which
oh
is
yeah,
like as
one
much
of
as
my favorite lightsaber designs for
yes, and
sure.
we've seen it in Star Wars before with other EU books and things like that, but this is the first time we get to see it in canon. This is the first curved lightsaber that's up for a duel, and yeah, it's a gorgeous design. I love curved hilt lightsabers, especially like the nail and the claw, or whatever that comes off the top of it. It's a
Yeah,
gorgeous, gorgeous saber. Um,
yeah, we get to see so much new things in
yeah.
here. Like you mentioned, the arena scene. Up until now, we've only seen two Jedi's on the same screen at a time
Hmm.
at the max. I don't think we've seen any more than two lightsabers lit up on screen.
Yes.
I can't literally name a moment, not even in the originals and the prequels. Well, I guess technically the Duel of Fates there was three lightsabers because, but we didn't see them actually fighting all at the same time.
Hmm. Right.
Everyone was waiting, so we didn't get a full 3-on-3 kind of on the screen. But out of nowhere in the arena, we get all the Jedi just igniting, which was the coolest thing because we never seen that before.
Yeah.
You see all the colors all light up around the arena, which was awesome.
It's taking down the droids, taking down the Geonosians, Anakin and all them just going to battle, which is very unlike them. And this is kind of what this is going to attest to the fall of the Jedi, is them getting stuck into this war. This is pivotal for the Jedi's downfall for the Sith, pretty much, is to drag the Jedi into this war. And it works as they use, two Jedi and the Senator for bait. And I always love that scene though, where because Anakin's like, "What are we gonna do? How do we get out of this? Well, we'll figure it out. What about Padme? She's got it. She's
Yeah.
already climbing up. She's like halfway up the pillar already."
Yeah, that was one cool thing they did real well
Hmm.
about kind of like who would Leia's mom be like,
Yeah.
and they did a really well job of like, and that's my favorite thing about when they do a character that's with Jedi,
Yeah.
like the distinction between Jedi and a normal person, like that normal person is way more ambitious or way more like they're really good in the moment, they're
Hmm.
really good at planning, they're really good at strategy, so they instantly like but the Jedi are still like, what should we do at this moment? She's already up there figuring out what to do,
She's
and
instinctual.
yeah, I love that because she's like you clearly like see yeah that's Leia's mom right there.
Yeah.
When you realize it, at first you may not put two and two together, um,
I
but
also
yeah,
really enjoy the like, sorry, there's all the love scene stuff, and as much as it is kind of like the worst dialogue for like a lot of it, it does touch in like the heart a lot. You're like, oh, okay, these two like fall in love. She finally admits it right before they're gonna die, and they, all is not looking good for them as they like fight this Ackley, this all these big awesome monsters that look really cool. And then these Jedi show up, and we get this big fight one on one between like Mace Windu and Jango Fett, which ends so much faster than
I
I
don't
thought
even
it would.
don't brush over that because it's like out of nowhere. Like we've seen in the
Hmm.
EU, but out of nowhere, it's like, is that a purple lightsaber?
Yeah. Yes.
It's like you literally see most of the Jedi in the background have this standard green and
Green
blue
or blue. Yep.
lightsabers, and then all of a sudden purple out of nowhere.
Bro, and he just blocks those bolts, does his thing, beheads Jango Fett. I was like, there's no way that just happened that fast. Even as a kid, I was like, did that really just happen that
Es-
fast?
Especially since he really gave Obi-Wan a he thought Obi-Wan
Hmm.
Obi-Wan struggled against him on Kamino, so they had a pretty good duel on Kamino
Yeah.
prior to that. So he's not a pushover. So yeah, he did just end it, which I guess they kind of wanted to do something similar to what they did with Boba Fett when they
Hmm.
ended him out of nowhere.
I guess, yeah. It was gnarly too. I didn't expect the beheading. It was, I always
Yeah,
loved
George
like,
Lucas didn't really like the Fets too much.
yeah, I guess he was like, let's just get rid of this. But it's still a great scene because then we get the super battle droids and the droidicas, and this is when everything seems outnumbered and things are like really going bad. You have the Jedi surrounded and like covered in the center of this, getting ready to be pretty much just fired upon until they finally fall down. And here comes the army of the Grand Republic, which I know for you is probably one of the best moments in Star Wars. We get the clones in action, starting off, coming in with gunships, turrets blazing.
Well, not only that, it's led by the most passive Jedi ever.
Yeah.
Was totally against it to begin with, and he's like talk about like we got to investigate. This is kind of trouble. We don't need an army, all this stuff, and all of a sudden he's like full on leading an entire army onto the battlefield.
Yep.
Speaking of, we get an awesome scene after that, which when
Oh
I was a
man.
kid was the coolest thing ever.
Hmm.
We get after the clones land with those awesome ships.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we then go over to seeing Count Dooku
Hmm.
kind of leaving, and Anakin and Obi-Wan chasing after him, which also gets Yoda joining that as well shortly afterwards.
Oh, dude,
Um,
and yeah, we get the scene too. We're starting to see the attachment between Anakin and Padme, and Obi Wan's like, "Leave her. That's what she would choose anyway." He has to like choose to finally leave her, and then we have the fight though. That
yeah,
fight
we get
is,
two awesome things in that fight.
mm,
Besides just seeing them fight,
yes.
we get to see more Sith lightning and other stuff. We get to see somebody dual wield for the
Hmm.
first time, which was like against what all of George Lucas said prior to that. Like you mentioned before, he always said we got to have two hands on the hilt
Yeah.
at all time. Count Dooku is the first one that's one-handed because he's doing that with the saber. But then We get Anakin just picking up two sabers like he's been doing it forever,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like, what? What? He's just like twirling those sabers like crazy. And then the dual wielding style basically came into canon, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the most popular lightsaber styles of all time for sure.
Yeah.
You think of like, like Darth Revan and stuff like that, how
Oh
different
yeah.
they would be if they didn't add the dual wielding lightsaber combat in that.
Even in like Jedi Survivor, it's such a fun thing to use. I love it. Dual wielding is just it's powerful. It's crazy powerful. It's aggressive.
But yeah, if we had the kind of introduction to the new style of
Mm-hmm.
lightsaber duels with episode one, episode two kind of flipped that to the max
Yeah.
with the whole spinning, twirling, more acrobatic style
Yeah,
of
especially
lightsaber fighting.
yeah, especially when we get Yoda on screen because that's number two. That's
Yeah.
the next best thing about this is then Yoda shows up after Obi-Wan and Anakin get beat up to fight his apprentice. We start really learning. It's like, oh my gosh, that's right. Yoda was trained by Count Dooku. That's crazy. And then they start really going at it like
Other way around, but yeah.
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
Dooku was
yeah,
straight by Yoda.
yeah. There we go. Yeah, Yoda
Yoda's way too old
is
for
the
that.
yeah. Dooku's not that old.
Uh, but yeah, it's just funny because up until that moment, all we've seen of Yoda is him
Hmm.
like scooting around with his little walking stick. We've only seen him as a puppet before, and him being just a goofy old man on a swamp planet that just talked in riddles.
Hmm.
And then we get him back in the council, and he's just sitting there the whole time. And then we get him a little bit moving around in this movie. Then he just drops the cane and goes crazy. The most energetic Jedi we have seen ever.
Oh yeah, like I can't remember what style it is, but he uses full amounts of this acrobatic style,
Just all
jumping
over,
around.
just bouncing. Yeah.
Hmm.
His little green lightsaber.
It's a lot of fun too how you hear Christopher Lee talk about filming those scenes where he's like, "Well, I wasn't able to move as fast as I was back in my younger years, so they would pretty much just have me. I'd block and look in a direction, and then I'd go somewhere else and I'd block and I'd look in that direction, and then they'd fill it in later with the guy over top." Because the fight that we get, yeah, like they're just
Yeah.
it's a light. There's lightsabers going everywhere. It,
It
it was
was
it was
yeah.
crazy.
When I was a kid, I thought the dual lightsaber thing was crazy, and then they
Hmm.
dropped that fight, and like I said, he catches the if you remember he catches the force lightning.
Yeah.
We never seen that because before we seen it with Sidious
Hmm.
back in the original, and we seen force lightning, but Dooku does it, and then Yoda just kind of catches it and
Hmm.
kind of deflects it back. So that was interesting. But yeah, Attack of the Clones just has so much just impact one after the other. It doesn't slow down very much. When we do, it's usually with Anakin
Hmm.
and Padme. Um, and I guess that's where the weird dialogue starts to hit when
Yeah.
the excitement kind of slows down because it's like awkward dialogue, intense fighting, awkward dialogue, intense fighting.
Hmm.
It happens a lot like that. Um, I don't know. I just like it because there's so many introductions. It does kind of remind me of how Empire Strike Back
Hmm.
happened, where it's more. You see a lot more bigger battles in this. Like what we get with Empire Strike Back, when you get from New Hope, it's kind of like the introduction to the hero's journey. Then Empire Strikes Back, we see like the Battle of Hoth, and we see all the other major incidents on
Hmm.
that, and so it's a lot bigger battlefield as kind of the grand expansion of the universe in a way. So we kind of get that with episode two, where they take us from mostly on Tatooine and Naboo to
Yeah.
now this. It's more grand. It's
We're getting to
things
see a
have
lot of
changed.
Coruscant.
Yeah,
Well,
we
and of course,
see.
this will spawn what is the Clone Wars, which of course is
Yeah,
an extremely popular time period, extremely loved time period for Star Wars fans. Um, and Attack of the Clones, though, now I think one of the biggest points to talk about before we get too much deeper into the movie, like endings and stuff, though, is of course the scene like that changes Anakin forever. You know, the women, the children, all of them. I slaughtered them like animals. They are animals. The scene with the Tusken Raiders, where he goes back to Tatooine to save his mom, that is probably one of the moments where it is another one where it's very calm in the beginning. That has some of the best dialogue because it's not love scenes between Padme and Anakin. It's Anakin just he talks to Watto. He goes and talks to the Lars family, and then he goes on this adventure to find his mom. Eventually does, and just wipes an entire camp of Tusken Raiders off the map of Tatooine to the point where the other tribes have a horror story about the blue demon.
Yeah, this is when we first kind of, because we see Anakin is rash.
Mm-hmm.
Does he jumps in the face of danger. We haven't really seen him really touch on the dark side. This is really the first time he kind of went
Yeah.
full dark side in a way. Which I mean, it's hard, and the fact is, it's the whole we kind of get the shown why attachments are such a big deal
Mm-hmm.
because after finding all that out and then seeing it, he just went nuts.
Yeah. He couldn't save his mom, and that was the beginning of his obsession with not letting people die.
And then which will lead into further into the third movie, which really
Mm-hmm.
transition him to the dark side. So,
Yeah.
which I saw was a funny video. I don't know if I sent that to you about Anakin fighting Obi-Wan and he hits him and he's like Obi-Wan heals himself with the Force heal ability,
Mm-hmm.
and Anakin's like, "How'd you do that?" It's like that's the whole reason I joined the dark side was to manipulate life, and you just used it on the light side. That's not fair.
Yeah.
He's like, "Can I trade back?" He's like, "No, you've already done it.
You
Can't come back."
changed. You can't come back now. I know. I've always I love that idea though. Like there's also these powers that so many of them don't know that they can't do. Um, but with Anakin in this one, he talks about that so many times where he's like, I feel like they're holding me back, and it's just like, bro, this is the moments where like you can show how Anakin is his own worst enemy way more than like the Jedi Council is not
Yeah,
holding him back. He can't blame anyone but his own problems with like why anything's happening like this because he's always like everyone's holding me back. I should be better than I am. It's like you don't know anything though. You just know how to
yeah.
like wave your hand around and kind of do stuff. You have no actual training.
He's confusing talent for experience,
Yes.
and hey, he does have a lot of talent. That's you know
Yes, it's always
kind of
apparent. He's always
it's
talented. He's extremely strong in the force. Everyone knows that, but sadly, he just refuses to
and that part
learn.
is pretty realistic
Mm-hmm.
because if you see somebody that's really good at something at a young age,
Yeah.
they often do get quite arrogant. You see it a lot with athletes that do well in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they get so drawn into being so how great they are, and then they go to college, get a scholarship. A lot of them fail miserably because they're so used to being the best player and just
Yeah.
getting by on their talents, and never had to actually work hard. And so that actually happens in real life. So that's quite interesting to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Though he doesn't really fail because of his talents, he just gets kind of way too ambitious.
Yeah.
Doesn't listen to reason
And
or
again, had he held
advice.
back, I mean, imagine it could have been Yoda and Anakin versus Dooku. They might have won. Like, there's just all these times where if he had
Yeah.
just relaxed and calmed down, it's with him and Obi Wan, where he's like, "All right, I think we should," and he goes, "I think we should take him now," and he just rushes in to fight it.
Well, if it wasn't for the Clone Wars, I don't think he would have fully gone into the dark side
Oh
because he
yeah,
wouldn't have
no,
been as aggressive
yeah.
person. So
The Clone
Sidious,
Wars was amazing because it forced the Jedi to not focus on being Jedi
yeah,
anymore. It forced them to focus on being soldiers, which made people like Anakin and Iskat from The Rise of the Red Blade, who was also strong but weak in the light side. Like because they were so strong, because they had all these gifts that they weren't allowed to use because they felt like the Jedi suppressed them, it then flowered into the dark side.
the cities, which we start to find out, he's setting all this up.
Hmm.
But he didn't really do it for Anakin. It just was a really good bonus for him.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Um,
It worked out. It also gave him a lot of Inquisitors, which I think that might have
yeah.
been a part of his plan.
We do see him starting to ascend in his power. Um, we find out that kind of tease that he has something to do with the clones, but we don't
Yeah.
know why and why he would do the clones, because it would seem, because up before that we've mainly seen him on the side of the Trade Federation, the Separatists,
Hmm.
kind of helping them out while pretending to be the leader of the Republic. And so then it didn't make sense why he would add an army to Republic. But then when you
Yeah.
find out later on, um, to add that, to give himself a really good army, or and all this military power, he had first kind of had this kind of puppet
Yep.
separatist army. And we
He
see
had an
the
enemy. He invented an enemy to create an army that he could then use to create an empire once he took over.
but one thing Episode 2 does so well, um, and that stands out quite
Hmm.
a bit compared to one thing it has over Episode 3 is because it introduced so much, for the expanded universe.
Yeah.
We get the more droid variants other
Yep.
than the Mark 1 battle droids. We get different lightsaber fighting. We
Hmm.
get like new lightsaber colors.
A lot of space combat.
Um, More planets, more different style of space combat. We get
Hmm.
it just everything's new. They just
Yeah.
throwing, because before we've only seen like certain similar things. They kind of strayed away with Episode 1, but
Hmm.
they really strayed away with Episode 2. Um, when we get to the fighting and the combat, we had the new soldiers with the armor.
And we got to see a lot of
But
new Jedi too. I mean,
yeah,
Coleman Traber, the dinosaur head guy. This is where we
yeah,
get Luminara, like for the first canon time and stuff like that, like these masters and stuff. And again, that arena scene, that's the only time ever we even see that many lightsabers all together, except for like the High Republic art, which isn't shows yet. Not until the Acolyte comes
well,
out soon.
yeah. Up until that moment, we've never. I don't even remember any EU
Hmm.
stuff, where there's that many Jedi's in one spot. And so seeing that, was pretty crazy, because we saw Jedi's like the Jedi Council, but they didn't have their lightsabers out. They were just
Hmm.
sitting in chairs. And then to see them out of those chairs and other Jedi we've never seen before, like we know the whole, like, there's more Jedi out there, but we never
Yeah.
got to see them. We
Well,
only got to see the
and the
council.
charge, like with Aya Sakura and Windu and them, like literally, they drop off. You see Yoda getting dropped
Yeah.
off. They're firing at this ship, and you see lightsabers in front of battalions just charging in. Like it was so cool. It was so much action. It was a crazy, crazy time where again we didn't know any of this. We didn't know if the Clone Wars was really going to entail, and then we started to finally understand what this was going to be.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy that if you think about it, it all stemmed from the line of what they mentioned, the Clone Wars
Hmm.
and New Hope.
Yeah.
Just a quick line, one-off line. Your father served in the Clone Wars. It's like, well, why aren't you gonna ask what the Clone Wars was? Like, you know what they are, but ask them about the Clone Wars.
I want to know, and now we know. Oh man, do we know now? It was
We got
always so much fun to see, and you got to see the different colored clones, and that's where like that love came in, and people latched onto it so much they knew they could make more. And again, we get then the Clone Wars series, which are super beloved.
well. First, we got quickly after the movie, we got those shorts.
Yes, the
Um,
I always forget his name, Tartatsky or something.
he one of the guys behind Samurai
Hmm.
Jack, made Star Wars shorts. The original in Cartoon Network. I believe you can still watch them on Disney. I don't think
Yeah.
they took them off. They're like 10-minute long, I think. They're just mostly action of clones fighting, and there's some Jedi combat in there as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, his name is directed by and developed Genndy Tartakovsky.
But at the time, there's a popular show called Samurai Jack,
Hmm.
and he had a very unique art style.
Yes.
And then they got him to do Star Wars essentially, and his art style did really well with cool fighting. with the samurai. So they did that with Star Wars, and when I was a kid, I loved it. And then we got the actual Clone Wars series, which most people are familiar with. Which at the time I hated. I didn't watch it for the longest time. I was like, it was so. I was like, why would I watch this when we had a cooler Clone Wars series back? That was way more fun to watch. And all
Yeah,
I get on this one is this little weird kid whining the whole time. What's this Ahsoka character? She's the worst character in Star Wars.
little did we know. Yeah, it becomes one of the most amazing characters ever. But that all stems then also from Attack of the Clones, where the Clone Wars was so latched onto
Yeah.
immediately by so many fans. We asked so many questions, and the evolution of the clones alone is such an amazing story. We don't get any of that in any of the movies. It is only the
Yeah.
Clone Wars that really gives us this attitude, this vibe of who the clones are. Because in Clone Wars, they were so fresh, they didn't even have personalities really. They were all shiny and new.
Yeah, well, that was the one of the cool things about Star Wars itself, but also the most miserable things
Mm,
is you get a small window into this massive universe. There's so much happening in this universe and over time, but we only get a small glimpse of what the main character experiences in that point of time, and then that's it. And then it's like that's the movie. You get to see Anakin's experience through this moment. Well, Anakin and Obi-Wan, because there's points where Anakin wasn't there.
yeah.
Um, through this moment, and then after that, it goes to episode 3, and there's so much that happens between 2 and 3. And there may not be as a big of a time jump between episode 1 and 2,
Hmm.
but because of the war, there's so much happening. It's like it's hard not to watch the Clone Wars when you're going into episode 3 because you're glossing over so much.
Oh, yeah, a lot. And you wouldn't know it because again, we didn't really have that much of it. But man, the story makes so much more sense. The Mortis arc and all these things, like it helps with the fall of Anakin. Because if you just watch episode 2 to episode 3, you are just like, okay, like yeah, he's done some bad things, but like by episode 3, he seems a lot more calm and like he's kind of realized a lot more of his errors. And you don't realize why until you go through the Clone Wars. You're like, oh, because he's made a lot more mistakes.
And
And he
then
had to be a master.
And at this time too, it was a good time for Star Wars. We may not have got as much promotional
Hmm.
material as Episode 1, but we got way more books at that
Yeah.
time after Episode 2. We got a lot of books. I remember the Scholastic book
Yeah.
fairs.
Yes.
I had several books.
Oh, that we got
Um,
a lot of the. Those when
I
they
had
started to
the
really pump out. What are the like the behind the scenes books, the costume
well,
books, the
well,
character
they had
books.
character books because I had the Jango Fett books,
Hmm.
which is crazy because I was into Boba Fett that long ago that I had the Jango Fett books. Um, So the Jango Fett books, and they had games that spawned one of the best games. I mean, for starters, Battlefront, the original Battlefront, came
Yeah.
out after Episode 2,
Hmm.
which is arguably one of the best Star Wars games of all time.
Oh yeah.
Um,
So it's
and
definitely up
then
there.
we get the Jango Fett game that
It's a
is,
fun one. Battle fighter.
it's fun, but it's different. It's a fun game. It's
The
one of those games you'll
episode
play
two,
once.
bro. The episode 2 Attack of the Clone game, where you get to play mostly. It's like mostly a vehicle driving game, where you
Yeah.
can get out every now and again. Oh, so much fun.
Well, the tank battle. My favorite moment of that game that I still remember is the tank battle. Or it's like
Hmm.
artillery, more like artillery when you do the battle of Geonosis. It's just
Yeah.
shooting. They're like trying to escape, and they're giant ball things. Um, Another cool thing we get. We get another cool game. I can't think of it at this moment. Clone Commando.
Oh yeah.
One of the
Oh
other very
dude.
popular.
Which talk about
Game.
again a book series that will follow because and like is so
Yeah,
much popular.
the
Man, the
book
Clone
series
Commando
was way more popular.
is so good. It's such a good
But yeah,
game.
if at the time Halo was at its peak,
Mm,
and so they made a Star Wars version of it. It was a lot more harder,
mm.
and than Halo was, in my opinion, because the mechanics weren't as good. But it was still it was a good game.
Yes.
If Halo wasn't a thing at that time, like because I believe at that time Halo 2 was out,
Mm.
which was so popular. Um, And if that wasn't a popular, I believe Clone Commando probably would have been like the game.
Which would have helped. Oh man, if they could
Yeah,
have like kept making those games and done like an online, like Reach
yeah. They didn't.
style,
I don't
and
think they did a
they would.
multiplayer
There was
like
no
the others
nope.
did.
Yep, it would have been so much more fun. Oh, I would love a new Clone Commandos game. Love it
So
because
yeah.
they're all canon. That's one of the cool few things that really made its way all the way into
Oh yeah,
canon
because
was them.
Bad Batch
Yeah.
brought it back.
Yep.
But yeah, we get the cool one of the coolest design for the clones. These guys that honestly are like pre Bad Batch in a way. They're so
Hmm.
unique, and they have their own style.
I still
Um,
use Clone Commandos to this day when playing Battlefront 2.
and they're like the clone units.
Hmm.
It's like we get the ARC clones and then we get the commandos. It's funny because both refer to them as like the better clone, but
Yeah.
I think the clone commando books kind of show that the commandos are better than the ARCs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you kind of see it as like the commandos are more like Navy SEALs,
Hmm.
whereas the arcs are more like the kind of like special force scouts.
Yeah, I can see that.
They're not as heavy as the commandos. They're more scoutish, and
Hmm.
you see them more leading units than they are. They either are like by themselves and
Right. The
small.
commandos, like you said, are more like the Bad Batch, which are like 12
Yeah,
miles behind enemy lines doing shit.
commandos typically don't work with other clones. They
Hmm.
typically are in a small squad, like being a Spartan in Star Wars. It's it's like somebody. I guarantee you they get the idea from Clone Commandos from Halo for sure.
um, but the armor really does kind of come from Halo a lot too.
Yeah.
It's kind of bulkier, it's bigger. The helmets are really nice. I think it's one of the craziest things about the game. It was one of the first games you could wipe the visor off if you like go up and get
Well, you get the visor for the whole
yeah,
game too.
you get
It's
the
so
visor for the whole
annoying, but
game,
it's
but
cool.
if you would get a melee kill and you were like really up close to him, it would like splatter, and then you
Yeah,
could do that a little like cleaner thing would go by and clean the visor off.
yeah, they're unique. They had the little blades in their wrist. They were the closest to a Mandalorian. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know. Arcs are kind of like Mandalorians in their own
and
aspect as
they're
well.
they're very jetpack and dual blaster. I mean, look at Rex there behind you. That's exactly how a lot of
Yeah.
Mandalorians would do it. But they were all amazing, and it is the spawn of like you don't see any of that in the Clone Wars because again they're just trying to show you like the birth rate of like some of them, but
Yeah.
that first batch Rex was one of the first batches, right? So like because we see they have the first set and they were making more whenever Obi-Wan's getting there, but that first set is apparently like one of the like not strongest, but they were just like given the most like they're tests. They're like, hey, we're trying
Yeah.
this for the first time, so they have a little bit more freedom. It's kind of why like you see Rex is able to fight off the Order 66 a little bit better than like Jesse and them were.
Well, some of them, I think. Well, Rex is kind of an exception, but
Hmm.
we also get Cody pretty early on as well.
Hmm.
Some of them are kind of bred that way to be a leader from birth. Where you get to some of
Yeah.
the officers, but yeah, there was some exceptions, and yeah, they were not meant to survive, and most of them didn't. So yeah, they were a little more. I don't know. It's weird because the how the movie projects them and how they got and how they introduced because it kind of started out with the droids. They didn't
Hmm.
give them much personality.
Yeah.
They're pretty basic. They were meant to be cannon fodder. But as time progressed, they started giving them more, and they kind of showed that in the show as well, where most of the clones didn't have their own individual
Yeah.
personalities. But as the kind of DNA kind of was reused, it was kind of starting to split. Then
Mm.
also as the clones started hanging out together, they started kind of developing, uniqueness, even though they're the same copy of each
Yeah.
other. You start to see some deviation. I know you get that a lot with the early group with like Echo and Fives and all them.
Hmm.
It's when we really, really strongly see that.
Yeah.
So
I found like a lot of that relationship though. Uh, the Clone Wars feels like it's such a necessary thing when you know it all, but it is totally possible to just watch episode 2 to 3. But you really are losing a lot
yeah,
if you don't go through and learn like why all these people are important. Um, why Order 66? Like Order 66 does not have that much of an impact if you
yeah,
haven't seen the Clone Wars and realized how long these people have all worked together, how many like lives they've seen lost in front of them and stuff as a unit, as a team. Um,
but it gets heavily one-sided because you only see it from the Jedi
mhm.
perspective, really, in the movies. You don't really see much from the clones in the third movie, which is crazy because Rick should be much more impactful,
Yeah.
but um, I guess they never really wanted to add them to the big screen. But yeah, and then we get to later stuff with like the post Order 66 we got with some of these like Andor and stuff like that. You see some remnants of clones, and if you don't watch the Clone Wars and pay attention in episode 2 and 3, with the clones' perspective of things,
Hmm.
or we get, or in Bad Batch, it wouldn't have as much of an impact because you wouldn't know why, like with Bad Batch, why it's such a big deal. They're how they call each other brothers,
Yeah.
and then we get with like Andor talk about what to do with the clones, and they're treating them like they're not people.
Hmm.
But to you, if you skipped all that and went from episode 3, and you did the movies, went to Andor,
Yeah.
the dimensions of the clones, to you wouldn't really matter because you'll see like the homeless clone and stuff, and they kind of talk about it a little bit. Um, so it wouldn't kind of resonate with you,
Yeah.
and and then we talk about Bad Batch. I can't see not watching the Clone Wars before the Bad Batch and not like
Oh, definitely.
not
It will
really,
help immensely.
yeah,
But yeah,
because we get
the
the
Clone Wars, the movie, the series is definitely, again, like you said, yeah, I could see that. It's much more about the perspective of the clones and the wartime, whereas the movies are more about the Jedi, and especially because episode 2, even though it is, yeah, Attack of the Clones, and that does happen, the Clone Wars begins. That's Anakin's story. That is like this is the even though episode 1, 2, and 3 are about Anakin's fall, episode 2 is you can really tell like, oh, that's right, Anakin's the main character. We follow him to Naboo. We follow him to Geonosis to help. He gets saved by everybody at the whim of the Jedi Order. Starts this huge war, and then at the end, he gets married.
I could have sworn it was R2D2 was the main character.
You'd think so. He's in a lot of the shots. He's in a lot of them. He's in a
He's in
lot.
every movie, so
Yeah. I
there's
would
more movies
always,
than Anakin is.
if he's not really ever wiped, then like how did they really not tell him to record that? Where he's like, were they too worried that R2 would just like use it against him if they recorded the wedding? Because I mean, come on, like I'm sure Luke and Leia would have loved to have seen that.
We had to be wiped because in episode 4, C-3PO and him don't remember Obi-Wan or Luke or nobody.
That is a good point. Yeah, true.
I mean, I guess they couldn't associate Luke. I mean, they should have eventually put 2 and 2 together with all the name dropping, but
Yeah,
still, it's like they don't. They should at least recognize Obi-Wan.
right. That's a very good point
Like,
too. But episode
they,
2 is definitely a very strong. I mean, it's a great middle movie. It does exactly what the middle movie needs to do. It gives you a few more interesting points when we have. Not only do we have the new Sith, but he gets away.
yeah.
Now, and that's another reason again to watch the Clone Wars because then you go into episode 3 and hey guys, spoilers for episode 3. Count Dooku don't make it very far into that movie, so
And they also in episode 3 they drop a new bad guy out of nowhere, like, and we're supposed to
yeah.
be pretty established. So seeing General Grievous without watching Clone Wars is kind of
Hmm.
like it's kind of weird because and it's funny because he was introduced oh way long ago because he was
Yeah.
introduced in that Clone Wars shorts that I mentioned
Yes.
before, and so he's been an older character. But if you only watch the movies, you're like, who? What is this robot thing?
Why do you mean you've heard of everyone? I expected you to be taller. I expected you to be older. What's going on here? Why do you guys know each other, kind of, from like stories long told?
Yeah,
But
they constantly talk about like, so Obi-Wan. It's like they're like nemesis, like they've been
yeah,
fighting. It's like we've never seen you before. This isn't fair.
and that's another thing I think that really helps episode two shine. It's only setting up story. It's not trying to. Everything
Yeah.
else has already been dealt with just by Anakin being there. The love story, you already kind of know where that's going to, like, you know where a lot of that story goes. So it's just setting up all this stuff for episode three to then take it and, you know,
Well, it's set up so much. If you think about like
drive it to the
episode
ground
one
amazingly.
and the stuff followed episode one
Hmm.
is not as much as compared to what followed episode two. It's
Right.
like because episode two just introduced so much new possibilities
Hmm.
that literally so much came out from it. So many games with the clones, with the Jedi's. It's like
Hmm.
and books and
And the
it
second
just
movies
was.
are known to have big battles in them. We have, of course, Empire Strikes Back has the Battle of Hoth, and then we have Attack of the Clones, which has the Battle of Geonosis.
And no, that's kind of stops with the sequels though.
Let's see. Last Jedi does have the Battle of Crate, so that the Resistance is like final stand. So I guess there's kind of that one.
Eh, I don't feel that it's impactful as the third movie's battle.
Yeah,
I guess it's true. I don't know.
the third no Rise of Skywalker is like big ship fight is the big like hoo ha fight moment, which is normally a second movie thing. Not a bad thing, but yeah, it is. It's Attack of the Clones and Empire that kind of share this grandiose battle on very opposite planets. Geonosis and Hoth, very different, very, very opposite.
Yeah, we well, because it's similar because we get that salt planet and the sequels. That's the
Yeah,
closest we get to the Battle of Hoth.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's if you compare the three battles, yeah, we get ice, salt, and then desert.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it was, I mean, I like the movie. I know it gets probably the worst rap for some people.
Hmm.
Some people argue that episode one's it's a lot of people put them in the same boat as like the worst movies. I've even seen some people put on tier lists. They'll put them like the worst movies, or even when counting the sequels. They'll put episode
Yeah,
one and two at the very bottom.
right.
I don't feel like that's if compared. I wouldn't put them at the very bottom. I know people don't like them,
Hmm.
but it's strange because it's like the stuff that people like in Star Wars. It's like the stuff that you say that you actually do enjoy.
Hmm.
A lot of it's in episode two.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I don't know what the hate is for it. 'Cause
Well,
you
it
talk to some
starts off
people,
in
it's like
such a crazy way. Episode two has like an amazing start to it because it's the attack on Padme. So like you just see this moment where like here's Amidala coming down the ship. This guard's talk. See, I told you we should fight. Boom, boom. Like
yeah.
whoa! It just starts off on a really crazy note.
Well, it is for sure peak Anakin.
Yes.
In episode two, you get to see
The
Anakin.
changeling bounty hunter, that was a fun scene. And then, of course, the
Yeah,
bar scene. You want to buy some death sticks? You don't want to sell me death sticks. I don't want to sell you death sticks. You want to go home and rethink your life. I want to go home and rethink my life. And then he
back when
does.
back before that, we had a little bit creativeness with
Yeah.
spice. The drugs called spice. It's like,
Yeah.
come on, you don't have to keep stealing from the same thing you've stolen before.
You want to buy some death sticks.
So let's make our own drug. It's like we're gonna make cigarettes, but it's like we can't promote cigarettes to children. Literally tell children these drugs will kill you.
Death sticks.
Star Wars for kids. If
Yeah.
don't know Star Wars is for kids.
I've
Yeah, I mean,
always loved that whole scene though, because like there's also this weird football game going on in the background between droids.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like when you watch one of the
Yeah.
monitors, they're definitely playing some semblance of football.
Yeah. I mean, it has its weird quirks.
I love it.
But
There's a lot of
this
advertisements. You get to see a lot because you're on Coruscant for a good little
yeah.
while.
Well, it's the first time we got to really see Coruscant because
Yeah,
we see it in episode one, but it's like within the Senate chambers. It's not the same thing.
yeah. This is the streets. Like we get to see the very like the alleyways, the lanes, the space lanes.
The
This is
'60s diner.
yeah. Obi-Wan. I loved it. And then you find out that Dak Jester used to work with Maz Kanata and like was a pirate in the High
Yeah.
Republic, and you're like, damn, he had a really cool life. But that's also, oh yeah, that's an amazing scene. You want a cup of Jawa juice? So now we got a drink. It's more world building, you know. It's a lot of world building.
Yeah, we get to see where Coruscant or some planet literally went through the 60s.
Yeah.
They had to borrow that culture from something.
Yeah, yeah.
Space 60s.
I love
Uh,
the behind the scenes book too. Came out with for that one that talked about the waitresses, because there's the human waitress and there's the droid waitress, and they apparently fiercely battle for who is the number one waitress of the diner. I love that there's just like that little lore they had to throw in.
yeah, I mean, well, and it really popped off a lot of those those side stories
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of got more around around Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Because that when that really cut off, we started getting a lot of these what if books. We got all these
Mm-hmm.
comics and stuff, and then it kind of died down a little bit. Episode 1 came out. There was a little bit, but when Attack of the Clones came out, we started getting a lot of these more side
Yeah.
stories and a lot more lore and a lot more writing
Yeah.
involved. So it really was like the same impact that Empire Strikes Back did with expanding and adding more love to the
Mm-hmm.
universe. Though most people would argue the quality between the two movies is drastically different. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a good movie.
I love it. I love Attack of the Clones. I think it's a really fun movie. It's a really good time.
If you
We
haven't
get to
watched it in a
see, you
long
know,
time,
Yoda training younglings. That's always fun.
oh yeah, it's worth rewatching if you've
Mm-hmm.
been watching Clone Wars or Bad Batch and all this stuff. Go back and watch it because
Yeah.
it's the beginning of all that.
Yes.
It's you see the origin of the clones, really the origin of really what we kind of see as the modern view of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, kind of really kicked off with Episode 2, because Episode 1, really, if you rewatch it, it really is like you see so little uh, compared to what's going on. It's like Episode 1 is like there's a huge galaxy out there, but we aren't going to show you that. Instead, we're just going to focus on this little spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then Episode 2 is like, all right, now you get to see everything.
Yeah.
You get to see all the Jedi. You get to see Coruscant for what it is. You see multiple
Well, and a lot of the
planets.
Jedi Temple, like we get to actually like see for the first time, like random halls, staircases, just bits and baubles that are just everyday life for the Jedi. Like when Obi-Wan's walking around, you
Jedi
see
archives.
there's a lot of them just in the background. You're like, oh, that's right. There's a lot of Jedi still at this moment in time. There's a few thousand. Before the Battle of Geonosis, there's a good, healthy number of Jedi Knights just doing their daily thing.
And we don't get to see that in Episode 1 besides the Council. So we
Mm-hmm.
just get like a very little taste of it.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, these are the Council guys. There's this big temple. You get to see like the outside. But that's it. That's all you
Yep.
get to see.
Here's this big temple. We're going to the very top in the small dome room, and that's it.
And then you actually get to see it in this movie, which
Yeah.
is just crazy. It's you don't expect to see that. You didn't expect him to just like show you everything. Um, and I feel like we see quite a bit in Episode 3, but I feel like it doesn't have the same impact because we've already kind of been introduced to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Episode 2 is just does such a great job of setting up. It's because again, it knows it's a middle movie. It needs to just be a middle movie. It doesn't have to have this grandiose accomplishment of goals because it's just carrying on into Episode 3.
Yeah, Episode 3 couldn't really focus as much on storytelling if it
Mhm.
wasn't for Episode 2 because Episode 2 really sets the scene for everything.
Yeah.
Whereas kind of Episode 1 kind of really reignites the Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Episode 2 really like lays out this is happening now. This is the Clone Wars.
Yep.
This is Coruscant. This is the Jedi. This is how they're doing right now.
This is Jango
This
Fett
is-
and how he gets his ship, and there's Boba Fett. Haha, I figured that out.
These are the bad guys. These are how they're making their army. This
Yep.
is what they're up to. All this stuff. So you get that picture. Okay, next movie. Let's actually start the story.
I mean, but again, it blows my mind every time I rewatch that scene where Dooku is just straight up telling Obi-Wan, "Join me. I'm telling you right now, we could kill the Sith right now. Like we could take them out. I don't like him either."
I know who's in charge.
He's running everything. You gotta believe me.
He almost literally
Qui Gon would
spelled it
believe
out
me,
for him.
and I feel like Qui Gon would. I really do feel like Qui Gon would have actually been like,
Oh,
"Well,
he
hold on,
for
let's
sure,
listen to
hundred
him."
percent, 100% he would. I, 100. Qui-Gon definitely would listen.
Yes, Qui Gon would have been like, "Well, let's listen to what he has to say," and then they would have
'Cause
found
at
out,
that
"Oh, it's
point,
Palpatine."
yeah, at that point, if he tells him it's Palpatine, he tells Obi-Wan. I
Hmm.
still Obi-Wan wouldn't believe him.
Yeah,
But Qui-Gon, he for sure would listen. He's like, you know that you said that. He does look extra evil.
you know, I've never thought about it, but now that I think about it, every time I think about the guy, it's just evil. Oh my god.
His idea was at the pumps and power. Oh wait, it was his own.
Oh my gosh.
Makes sense.
He tricked Jar Jar Binks into giving him Supreme Chancellor like power ship. No way, not Jar Jar Binks.
Well, when he tricked, you know, he tricked Padme in making him Chancellor in the first place. So.
Right. Yeah, but I love it. He literally just says out loud, "Oh, if only." He's like, "We need someone strong here to make this pass to the Senate." And then who is it? Masamita just goes, "If only Padme were here." It looks like just looks at Jar Jar.
Well, he does that originally with Padme. He's like, we gotta do a vote. And it's like, she's like, I don't know what to do. They're not gonna listen. It's like, yeah, they're not gonna listen no matter what you say. They're just gonna argue with each other. What you gotta say is that you gotta do a vote of no confidence.
Yeah.
And then you gotta select a new chancellor. It's like, who would you pick that would have Naboo's interest in mind? Who do you know that's a chancellor? That chancellor, a senator that would have Naboo first.
Isn't that just crazy? You get and that's another thing.
Padme's like,
You're
I nominate
watching
myself
moves.
as chancellor.
Yeah, yeah.
She couldn't because she wasn't a senator.
Wasn't a senator yet. Wasn't a senator yet. You're right. But I do
You're
absolutely love that. It isn't until episode 3 again that it's really shown how much Palpatine's been doing. But again, once you see the Clone Wars and you go back and rewatch Attack of the Clones, with the Sifo Dyas stuff, with the Tyrannus, which is just Count Dooku's Darth name, you find out all of these things are connected and really, really well connected. And it's all Palpatine pulling these strings, getting everyone where he needs them to be. After a millennium of setting and plans, and the Sith just slowly gaining power and prestige, and it finally is beginning to come through.
You can't gloss over though. You said his Sith name, which I forgot until this moment.
Yeah, Darth
You think about
Tyrannus.
he is one of the most badass Sith names of all time. Like I told you, there's a Sith called Count Tyrannus.
Yeah.
If I say he's like, you would think he's like in the Old Republic or something. He's
Right.
like this like crazy spiky black armor and long flowing cape and everything. You wouldn't expect it to be Count Dooku, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I've always loved his Sith name. Darth Tyrannus is just it's absolutely
it's awesome.
cool. Sadly, yeah, he does fall to the dark side and he doesn't get redeemed and doesn't live long in episode 3, but Count Dooku is always a fan favorite and really spawned a cult classic for like dueling and like, the bent lightsaber. Absolutely love Count Dooku.
Well, he definitely gives a different vibe to what we've seen with the Sith. He gives a more elegant,
Yes.
like I said, very vampirish vibe.
One of the only others to do Force Lightning besides Palpatine as well.
Classic vampirish. I'm not
Yeah.
clear. It's
Which
old
he
school.
didn't even need Palpatine to learn. Again, just because I don't want anyone to think Palpatine was a good Sith, or at least a good master, because he wasn't. Dooku knew how to do Force Lightning before he joined Palpatine.
Well,
And
Dooku wasn't really an apprentice.
yeah, he just fell into the dark side, and Palpatine was pretty much just teaching
Yeah.
him how to harness that.
He wasn't really a full apprentice because even and he had his own apprentice too. Which you don't really know that unless you watch the Clone Wars.
You can call Asajj not an apprentice, but bro, even like, no, she's a Sith. She called herself a Sith multiple times.
What's referred to as his apprentice though.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Sidious says you got to kill your apprentice.
Yeah.
So she is his apprentice. Whether I mean she is I don't know if we. I guess she doesn't fully become a Sith. She's definitely a dark side user for sure.
Yeah, but I call her a Sith. She's learned the secrets. She's learned the rule of two. Blah blah. So to me, she knows too much to not be a Sith. But I also can
Yeah.
understand how people would say, "But she's not a Sith." That's fine because we get to see her in a week, which is why next week we're definitely not going over episode 3, guys. We're going to be covering the Bad Batch.
Yeah. We next week from when we're recording this, we
Mm,
will get our first 2 episodes of Bad Batch.
it's going to be awesome.
In case you didn't hear enough about clones,
Yeah.
so you're gonna hear a lot more.
A lot more. A lot more. First or 3 episodes, right? 2, 3?
I think it's just 2.
Yeah, I think it is just 2. I don't know what else about with the 3 episodes.
I know.
Start.
I know that somebody that they had some of the early review people that review TV and movies and ones that got to see the first 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, the reviews have been really high.
Nice.
People have really enjoyed it so far. So
That's awesome. I'm very excited for the Bad Batch. I'm excited to see it end. And like not so I don't once it's only Crosshair and Omega living anyway, so who cares? But if everyone dies, I'll still be sad. I don't like that this is the end because of the story. I just enjoy though that it's coming to an end, so that it's not going to get drawn out and pushed longer than it needs to be.
we're definitely going to get some big lore reveals.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're going to have to get something with the cloning with Sidious.
Yeah, more than likely.
So yeah, we're going to definitely get some along the lines of that. We get more info on the clones. We get to possibly find out what happened to certain clones that we don't get to hear from.
Yeah.
Because there's a big gap between when we see Rex again.
And Wolf and Gregor and like
and what happened to Cody?
Yep.
Why don't we ever hear from him ever?
Yep, exactly. It's going to be an awesome season. It's going to be a crazy time. So yeah, look forward to next week's podcast where we go ham on the first new episodes of Bad Batch season 3. Thank you all so much. Make sure to go see Attack of the Clones again if you haven't recently. We have Phantom Menace coming out soon in theaters for an awesome in theater drop. That's going to be amazing. So after you get home, pop back your DVD, your Blu-ray, or turn on Disney Plus and watch Attack of the Clones and really relive that nostalgia. It's a really great film. Highly recommend it. Guys, have an amazing rest of your week. And as always, may the Force serve you well.
May the Force be with you.